Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. It's always funny when you're mistaken for someone else, especially if you're an ordinary worker who's trying to help a customer. More details right after a short pause. So before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. No, I'm not a psycho. I'm here to help. Okay, so this was a good 20 years ago. Not going to mention the celebrity as I don't want to point them out, and because they've been having some health issues in the last few years. I was working Saturday mornings in a small electronics store located in a very quiet area. Trouble finding a park on a weekday, but weekends are dead ass. Nothing else was open in the area on the weekends, so you had to make sure you packed a lunch or you'd go hungry until you left for the day. The only reason we were open at all was to allow for pickup and drop-off of warranty items for people who could not come during normal business hours. Usually only 1 or 2 people the whole day, so usually you could get everything done, then play computer games or read a book for the other 4 hours. It was a pretty good money earner for pretty much just showing up. Anyway, one morning I've just opened up, still in my torn-up street jacket and having a quick smoke at the front of the store before I start getting into a hard morning of doing nothing. I see a certain A-list celebrity walking down the street with what is obviously a warranty repair under his arm. I know he's coming to the shop, and I'm a little annoyed that I'll have to cut short my morning smoke. Anyway, he spots me spotting him, and he sees me put out my smoke, obviously reacting to his presence, and then starts to look visibly concerned. As I know he's coming into the store, I give him the nod of recognition. He slows down and tries to avoid me. I realize now that he's scared of me and obviously thinks I'm a stalker. He ducks into the store, hoping to find refuge from this crazy fan. I follow in directly behind him, and his alarm levels go into overload. The look on his face is complete distress. He starts looking around the store to see if he can find someone to help him, a hiding spot, maybe a weapon. I quickly step behind the counter. Good morning, sir. How may I be of assistance today? I have never seen anyone so visibly relieved as everything sunk in. All my actions now made complete and logical sense to him. And our second story. My entitled family tried to force me to go against my father's wishes. At the end of 2018, my father got really sick from Parkinson's complications. Some background. My entitled grandmother, EGM, hated me from birth. The first words ever spoken to me right after birth were her displeasure at me being born a redhead. Her daughters, entitled Aunt 1 and 2, EA1 and EA2, follow her every command without question. My father, thankfully, somewhat got out from under their thumb after EGM basically threw him out at 18. They tried to get me under their thumb, but as soon as they figured out I wasn't going to do that, they treated me as persona non grata. I tried to keep the peace for my dad's sake. Once I became his power of attorney, POA, I gave that up. My parents divorced when I was 3, so they made the divorce hell for my mother, made me hate them even more after I learned more about divorce as I got older. Fun family, right? Story time. When my father got sick from the aforementioned problems, I was made my father's POA, since I was the only one without family obligations or a job at the time. The first few hours after my dad was hospitalized, EGM tried to pull the plug on him before we even knew what happened. Thus began this new hell. I immediately shot that down because we not only knew nothing about what happened, but EA2, my father's youngest sister, even sided with me on this. When my father actually got better and was relearning the basics of living, things got worse. When it comes to POAs, the person you have it with is the only and final say on what happens unless they're completely unable to. The EGM, EA1, and EA2 tried everything from emotional manipulation to financial manipulation to get their way. The incident that pushed me to the edge was about 6 to 7 months into my father's treatment and recovery. About that time, my father is talking well, using his wheelchair, getting the best therapy that I could get for him with his insurance and his funds. My father brought up the conversation about what nursing home he wanted to go to, since his time in recovery was coming to an end. I asked him if he wanted to stay near his home, for the convenience of his wife, or where else he wanted to go. I listened to him, as that was my job. The EGM lost it at this. Once the news got to her, she pulled a move that she pulled on my mother, calling both Adult Protective Services and filing an emergency junction for custody over my father to be executed and investigated on Friday. I learned about this on the Thursday before and had a hellish time that day, calling every number I had for the nursing home I got him into, my father's lawyer, my mom, and my stepmom's family. It took a whole Thursday of time from my father and spiked my depression and my stepmom's alcoholism. The Friday came, and my father and I sat down for both interviews. This is when I learned what happened. An anonymous tip was given to APS, and the court was called in by my EGM. I didn't think, at first, it was her, but I have enough pattern recognition to know when I was being played. She had told both institutions that I was abusing my father physically and mentally, and was all but leaving him on the street. Once both interviewers had gotten there, they knew she was lying. My father's lawyer wasn't needed, and I was informed that because of how well the interviewers were treated and the obvious lack of anything wrong, both cases were to be dropped. It was a hellish ordeal for both me and my father. At the end, he and I sat outside of the nursing home with a couple of military buddies he made at the home, drinking beer. We both needed it, and watching the sun set. I talked to my birth mom about all of this, and this is when I found out that the EGM, EA1, and EA2 had done this whole thing previously. My parents were getting their divorce. I guess poisonous mushrooms really don't change their spots. Edit. My dad's funeral was in October of 2020. A military funeral was set up for him at one of the cemeteries in Georgia. He had earned the full honors awarded to him there. The staff were super respectful, if a little strapped for time, as there were a few more funerals after my father's. I drive up, meeting my stepmom, her sister, her friends, and my birth mother's parents and sister. They were there to support me. Unbeknownst to me, EGM and that side of the family not only rented an SUV limo, they excluded my father's wife and myself from arriving in it. That kind of treatment was expected. I doubt they considered me family at this point. I'd only seen my uncle climb out, EA2's husband, and exchange half-attempted pleasantries before the staff informed us that it was time for the ceremony. We all pull up to the graveside. When I see EA and her husband, they're in LSU football gear. Husband was wearing a bright purple LSU jersey and tan cargo shorts, while EA1 is wearing some kind of pants and a purple LSU hoodie. All of this to an officer's military funeral. I was beyond embarrassed, but was in so much shock and pain I could only feel cold disbelief. EGM and company paid no attention to me or my stepmom throughout the ceremony and said nothing to us on their way out. Some of my dad's friends that showed up offered me my condolences, but overall, it was a cold send-off for my father. I had my own send-off for him, just to help me cope with the loss and betrayal of his family. Since then, I've written them out of my life. My cousins I wouldn't mind hearing from, but good riddance to bad garbage. And our next story. Shut my mouth and get out of your bar? Okay. I used to work at a bar as the only female security. They'd had some very bad things happen when a man followed a woman to the bathroom, so they needed a woman that could keep an eye on what happened in there. This bar got in legal trouble all the time. The bathroom thing above, the fire marshal closing them on some busy weekend nights for being way over capacity. The liquor board had pulled their license once already for over-serving and serving minors with pretty obvious fake IDs. I was one of the new security hired to help resolve all this. It was so bad we had to be trained by a government ATF person and get a card to prove we knew how to spot and stop overserves and spot fake IDs. I think the real reason they hired us was to have scapegoats on the ready for the next time they did this. So I worked there a while, doing my best. The owner's wife was the worst. She was always drunk, always had her friends in the bar, and bent the rules for them. She thought she was Lady Jesus, and we should all be kissing her feet because she was the owner's wife. I mostly stayed out of her way and had no issues, but many coworkers complained about her. One night, some dude gets sick on the way to the bathroom. I cut him off. He ends up getting escorted out by his less drunk friends. I notice a man sitting at the bar watching this. He had creased slacks, a jacket indoors on a summer night, and no drink in his hand at a busy meat market dance club. I started watching him and noticed the badge under his jacket. Aha! He was here to watch for overserving. A little later, a woman came to the bathroom, drunk enough to need to hold on to walls for dear life. I cut her off. She screams at me, then goes into the bathroom and tries to wash off the giant black Sharpie X's from the back of both hands. I warn her that she'll be kicked out of the club if she continues. She screams again and staggers out of the bathroom. About 5 minutes later, owner's wife is in my face screaming. The woman I had cut off was one of her friends, attending a bachelorette party in the VIP section, and I was supposed to somehow magically know she was VIP? I was also apparently supposed to break the law for her because she was VIP. So she and I start a screaming match where I inform her that her husband had hired me to make sure the law was followed. I also started to inform her about the police officer at the bar, but she screamed in my face to shut your mouth and get out of my bar. She fired me on the spot. I didn't bother waiting to see if her husband agreed. It was known she wore the pants. I complied. I shut my mouth and got out of her bar. I walked past the cop, still sitting at the end of the bar near the restrooms where the screaming match had taken place. I made eye contact with him, gave a slight nod to which he responded by looking at the boss's wife, rolling his eyes, and smiling at me as I left. They got shut down that night for over-serving the bachelorette party. This time, they went out of business because of too many strikes against them. And our last story. I am the owner, and you are no longer welcome here. Jack had always been proud of the small piece of land. He'd bought the property years ago, partly because of the green space. It wasn't much, just a small patch of grassland surrounded by a white picket fence. But it was his, and he loved it. So imagine his shock when he returned from a weekend away to find a large garage built right in the middle of his land. It was an eyesore, and it didn't belong there. Jack marched over to his neighbor's house, his anger rising with every step. He banged on the door until his neighbor answered, and he didn't hold back when he saw the Karen face. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, pointing towards the garage. "Why did you build this on my land?" "What the hell, Karen? You can't just build things on my property without my permission." Karen: "I needed a garage, and I thought this spot was convenient. It's not like you were using it for anything." "It makes no difference." Jack got angry. "This is my property, and you can't just take it." Karen looked implacable. She told Jack that she would be happy to buy the land from him for $1,000. Wow, what the F? Jack refused. He felt like an intruder, as if his neighbor had invaded his personal space. Over the next few weeks, Jack tried to figure out what to do. He didn't want to involve the police, but he didn't want Karen to get away with it either. He talked to a lawyer who advised him to sue his neighbor for illegal intrusion. I'm not exactly sure that's what it's called. It took some time, but in the end, Jack won the case. Karen was ordered to pay for the moral damages caused by the construction and to keep the garage for Jack. It was a frustrating and stressful experience, but Jack was relieved that justice was served. As they say, keep your friends close and keep your greedy neighbor even closer, because you never know when you might need a free new garage. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.